Good evening, everybody. Good evening, councillors, officers, members of the public who are with us in the gallery this evening, and everyone who's watching at home, and welcome to the December meeting of the Corangamite Shire Council. Can I start by asking everyone to stand for the prayer, please? We ask for guidance and blessing on this council. May the true needs and well-being of our communities be our concern. Help us who serve as leaders to remember that all our decisions are made in the best interests of the people, culture and the environment of the Corangamite Shire. Amen. Remain standing for the acknowledgement to country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land around Corangamite Shire, the Eastern Maar and the Wadawurrung people. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal elders and peoples past, present and emerging. Thank you. Mr CEO, we have no apologies this evening. All councillors are present. Are there declarations of conflict of interest?
Madam Mayor, as you're aware, you made a declaration to me of a conflict of interest in relation to item 8.1, which is the Cross Forest Road planning application, and item 8.3, which is the Manifold Street planning application. Thank
you, Mr CEO. And before we move on to confirmation of minutes, I would like to introduce the council and the officers that we have present this evening. We have Councillor Jamie Vogels, Councillor Kate Macon, Councillor Joe Beard and Deputy Mayor, Councillor Laurie Hickey, Councillor Geraldine Kennedy and Councillor Nick Cole. Our CEO, Mr Andrew Mason, and directors we have present are Ms Brooke Love, Director of Works and Services, Ms Justine Linley, Director of Sustainable Development, and Mr David Ray, Director of Corporate and Community Services. Also joining us this evening is Mr Aaron Moyne, who is Manager of Planning. Councillors, the minutes have been circulated. Would somebody like to confirm the minutes as correct, please? Councillor Kennedy, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Macon? Is there any comments, councillors, or questions regarding the minutes? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Minutes are carried. Mr CEO, Deputations and Presentations. We have a couple this evening.
That's right, Madam Mayor. We have got a written deputation from James, I don't have his surname, but in relation to the promotional sign in Cobden. So that's been circulated to councillors. We then have two in-person deputations, well actually three, one from Mr Charles Palmer and Miss Sophia Palmer, and one from Mr Eric Gastrain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We'll move on to the deputations and presentations, and as was mentioned earlier, that I have declared a conflict of interest. Obviously, in the item 8.3, Mr Eric Gastrain is my brother-in-law, and with regards to 8.1, there is possibility of a conflict of interest has arisen, and in the abundance of caution and ensuring that the decision that council makes is unquestionable, I've decided to vacate the chair and declare a conflict of interest for this matter. So I will ask the Deputy Mayor to lead you through the deputations, then I'll come back and we'll resume the agenda.
Okay, councillors, so we have our deputations and presentations. I'll now call upon Mr Charles Palmer to make his deputation first. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors and respective officers of the council. My name for the people at home is Charles Palmer, and I'm very excited to be here tonight. Not only did I grow up in Lismore, but my father actually grew up in Noorat and actually has a paddock locally named after him. This presentation is in relation to planning permit 81 at 81 Cross Forest Road, Camperdown. Firstly, this is more than just a presentation, but the beginning of a newly married couple energised wanting to join such a valued and diverse community who both have strong affiliations to neighbouring towns. The Planning Officer's Department believe that the dwelling does not provide an acceptable response to responsive planning controls and policies. Therefore, it is given the recommendations to councillors not to issue a permit. This is based on visual, zoning and overlay controls, which my wife and I respectively disagree. The first point is to note the original direction that was given to us in a pre-planning application meeting, which was with Council Planning Department and a health officer regarding the sewerage concerns. This was some 18 months ago. We were where the planning overlays and issues were raised. Some of these issues are as follows. After being informed from the Council Planning Department that you can build within the overlays, we thought it best not to build directly on the crater rim, but best to go as far back as economically and environmentally viable. Thus, we located the dwelling 16 metres back from the crater rim. This is an appropriate time to include an objection from the Morrises, which was only received in the last 4 to 5 days, which I would like to refer a section that they included in their objection. The planning scheme, which they have kindly pointed out, and I'll read to you now. The overlay, which covers a specific status of the lake zone's visual and aesthetics impact and protection of waterways. Whilst new freestanding development within the protected zone is severely restricted, it is within the exception that farmers wishing to expand a family presence. Now, just to repeat that, it is with the exception of farmers wishing to expand on a family presence, which the Planning Department fails to acknowledge. I would like to raise another issue at the pre-planning meeting, the proposed location of dwelling, which Council outlined and designed that future developments must match neighbourhood characteristics. This is why we have chosen a Harkaway home to match others around the lake. 2 other dwellings are also cladded with a Mount Gambier stone that has come up in question and pointed out on the site visits on the 6th of November 2019 and with council planning officers again at the recent council site meeting. We worked hard with Harkaway Homes with guidance set out at the pre-planning meeting by dropping the roof line by 300 millimetres via adjusting the pitch and have sunk the house into the landscape. We would like to point out that the veranda is only facing outside the crater. This is for 2 reasons. First, to reduce the roof line, further to help with further help with the ageing of the limestone faster, and will increase the integration of the house into the landscape. Again, at the pre-planning application meeting. There is a lack of native fauna and revegetation works to be completed along the slope for erosion controls and weed management. The council pointed us in the direction of Landcare and Catchment Management Authority, CMA. No environmental impact of the house or its locations was raised by council at that time or since. In relation to the relative 5 objections that have come in for environmental, 2 of whom live at the same residence and from my understanding are de factos. As their concerns are so strong, stating this is based on science, I thought it best to firstly reconfirm, which I have with council, and also note in the planning permit, which is in the report of the notes. Then to reach out with the scientists to fact check their concern. So I contacted one of the named participants in the recent scientific works in the local area, Daniel Wilkins, from the Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment, from the School of Research, Physical Engineering, the Australian University of Australia, who thinks it is a beautiful location for us to build a family home and how wonderful that we are doing the research to minimise our impact. He appreciates us getting in contact, but trusts the Environmental Department of Corangamite Shire will do an adequate job on advising us in respect. And if we are to build the house outside the catchment, i.e. on the outside of the basin, thinks the relative impact would be minimal. Hence, I would like to note that the house is on the outside of the volcano ridgeline and the water will run away from the volcano edge, not towards the water and the downslope. Now I'd like to hand over to my better half.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. I'll now call upon Ms. Sophia Palmer. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. As previously introduced, my name is Sophia. I'm an engineer and environmental scientist. Through my career, I have specialised in river and water body geology and geomorphology, riparian health, water health, erosion management, and I'm currently working as a project manager in construction. With the direction from the Council Planning Department at our pre-application meeting, we were off on our way to do what was directed. On the 9th of August 2019, we had Angus Donaldson from the CMA come out for a site visit. At our request, he sent a follow-up email with historic and native plants which would be best for the environment and active erosion management. Some of you have seen on the site visit being silver banksia. In addition to that, he mentioned shea oaks and tree violets. No environmental concerns of the dwelling was raised at this meeting. During our planning and visits to Camperdown, we got to know some of our neighbours, so we included them in the planning and design to see if the visual impact, zone and overlay controls would be an issue to them, which they have been nothing but supportive. On the 23rd of August 2019, financial approval was confirmed for the location of the house being set back 16 metres from the ridge line. In the recent councillor site meeting on the 1st of December, we pointed out that if the house wasn't built on the cited location, it would not be financially viable for us to continue, and the environmental works therefore would not be undertaken. A councillor interjected, stating that finances do not come into consideration on planning matters. We found this very interesting, considering the same councillor can be quoted in the paper The Standard on the 27th of September 2017, stating the caravan park in the same overlay should remain in the current site, as it would be financially impossible for the council to establish a new park elsewhere. I find this an interesting double standard. The environmental concern raised by an official was the only environmental concern raised by an official was the Planning Office in the report supplied on the 11th of December, 5 days ago, in relation to the proposed landscape plan. This was not raised in the RFI, this was raised after the fact. However, we were happy to accommodate. The landscaping plan has been amended by the direction of the Camperdown Botanic Garden and a local enthusiast to incorporate the Corangamite native plants list located on the council website, even though the planning department has not listed the species of concern. In October 2019, we sent our planning permit application to council. The request for further information was received on the 31st of October and a site visit arranged for the 6th of November 2019, where a different planning officer arrived who had misunderstood the planning application and had believed that we were building the house on the crater slopes. This was incorrect. The meeting on the 1st of this month raised some issues, such as the colour of our proposed materials. For some reason, this was not identified in the RFI. At this meeting, a council also interjected about setting a precedence. We confirmed that as all other properties around the lake within the rural conservation zone or farming zones already have a dwelling, it would not set a precedence. This is also backed up by the Council Planning Department response from a council meeting in April 2020, which read in response to objections on a planning application, the planning approval will not set a precedence for future development. This is not a relevant planning matter. To reconfirm, there is no rule stating you cannot build on the overlay, and furthermore, there is an exception for farming family presence to the overlay, inviting families to the area. This can also be backed up from the April meeting, where the planning officers responded to an objection for construction within the rim not being appropriate. The response was, the current zoning and overlay on the subject site do not prohibit the use and development within the crater rim. This is where we have come to our second disagreement with the council. Not as an individual, but as a couple. Not as an individual couple, but with overwhelming support of over 15 owners who live around the lake. This would have been 30 if you include spouses like some of the objectors have. They have given their valued time not only to review the plans, but to sign a letter. This letter is in support and consent for the proposed works, including the roofline in question. 2 of the signatories are from members of the advisory committee established for the local and human input on such issues around the lake. If the dwelling is to be given approval, we look forward to including many fascinating residents we met around the lake who have amazing horticultural knowledge in rehabilitation, the lake's history, and access to services such as beekeeping. We thoroughly respect the efforts that have gone into protecting the lake and the people involved. It has become clear that the rules shouldn't be set in place to forget what needs to be managed, relating to the significant weed management, i.e. the spiny rush, which is one of the more noxious weeds in our waterways. We wish to thank you for your respected voice as representatives of the community, who we hope you acknowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr and Mrs Palmer. And obviously that was in relation, councillors, to agenda item 8.1, which I failed to mention at the start. I'll now call upon Mr Eric Gastrain in relation to agenda item 8.3 for the demolition of building George Kane's cottage and construction of a single dwelling at 68 Manifold Street, Camperdown. Mr Gastrain, thanks.
Good evening, CEO Andrew Mason, councillors, Aaron and the planning team, ratepayers and local residents of this fabulous shire. Jen and I have applied for a planning permit to demolish a structure at 68 Manifold Street, Camperdown. This will, with your support, then allow us to apply for a building permit to proceed to build a home. We are aware that there is a heritage overlay covering this property and fully acknowledge and respect this. However, we also see this structure has truly passed its lifespan and cannot be correctly restored to its original stature. Yes, it can be cosmetically done up, but it will not be original and therefore will only ever be another pretty done-up cottage. We firmly believe, along with everyone we have shown or talked to about the structure, and believe me, there have been many, that it should be pulled down, burnt or demolished. Everyone has told us it is an eyesore coming into the town. It's a fire hazard, vermin and breeding ground, etc., etc. Jen and I will, with the confirmed volunteered help of Camperdown Historical Society, highlight the significance of the site and its history by demolishing the structure and replacing it with an appropriate plaque on site. This will have the oldest available photo of the original cottage, plus the history and story of George Kane in Camperdown. Surely this would be more beneficial to the community and those interested in the history of Camperdown than a rundown structure that is not original as it stands now on the site. We trust that you, the councillors, acknowledge what the community and we are requesting and vote accordingly. The community that voted you in to represent them await your decision on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Gastrain. Councillors, we'll just get our Mayor back, please. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Beard. Now return to general business, to standing orders, councillors. First item is item number 7, committee report 7.1, Youth Council feedback to the draft Victorian Youth Strategy 2020. Mr Ray, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much. The report recommends that Council endorse a submission by the Corangamite Shire Youth Council to the development of the Victorian Youth Strategy. The Victorian Government has called on submissions from young people, including those within Corangamite Shire, to inform the development of a statewide youth strategy. The Corangamite Shire Youth Council has taken up that opportunity and considered its submission or position to the strategy at its November meeting. A submission has been drafted and attached to the report, signed by the Youth Mayor, Ms Lowry, and it's recommended that Council endorse that submission. In particular, the Youth Council notes concerns regarding greater access to services, improved public transport, and I guess a range of opportunities for the young members of our community to participate in. So, Mayor, it's I guess a first for the Youth Council seeking council endorsement, and so I proudly endorse that recommendation to you.
Thank you, Mr Ray. Councillors, there's a recommendation there. Would someone like to move recommendation as a motion? Councillor Beard, do I have a seconder? Councillor Cole. Councillor Beard.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. This is exciting, and as Director Ray alluded to, it's the first time that we've had to do such a thing, and to stand beside our Youth Council. It's a great submission that has obviously been signed off by not only the Youth Council but penned by our Youth Council Mayor, Tess Lowry. And once again, it's our Youth Councillors using their voices. Obviously, we've seen that happen when we were able to endorse the youth strategy. Just only a couple of months ago, or early in the year I should say, and it's been highlighted with the advocacy, particularly advocacy actions out of that, which are then going to coincide with this submission. So it's great to know that when this reaches the desk it needs to in Spring Street, along with the submission will also be the Corangamite Shire Youth Strategy, which is really exciting. There's so much in there, obviously the feedback that will align with what our youth are telling us in this submission to the Victorian Government. Obviously the improved mobile and internet services we've heard so often, connectivity is a major thing that's a problem for our youth, as we know for us as adults. And that was really highlighted during the remote learning throughout the year. So that's obviously something really important that people in Spring Street in this environment need to know about. Obviously we'll be advocating on their behalf, but the fact that these kids can actually do it for themselves as well. Also the pop-up and mobile activity hub, which was actually, I was in the meeting when the kids came up with that and putting their ideas forward on what they felt the state government need to know about their wants and needs. And I was really enlightened that this was actually one of the ideas that one of the kids came up with, and I thought it was a fantastic idea. So I think the submission is very reflective of what our kids are talking about, and I'm more than happy to endorse that on behalf of Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillor Cole, did you want to add anything?
Thank you, Mayor Ruth. I think if we don't encourage the youth of the Shire to get together and bring up ideas, we're all a little bit greyer than they are, so we're probably not getting the full thing. If we want youth to stay in the Shire, we've got to engage them, help them in any way, and listen to them. So I encourage it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillors, anybody like to add anything further? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All in favour? That item's carried. Okay. The councillors, we're moving on now to planning reports 8.1, and in the agenda you'll see that 8.1 is the application for Cross Forest Road, followed by the signage at Cobden, and then the development at 68 Manifold Street. I'm just asking for your agreement that we deal with items 8.1 and 8.3 so that I don't have to keep coming in and deal with item 8.2 after we've concluded 8.3. We just reverse those. Is everybody happy for that to happen? Okay. As mentioned before about conflict of interest, I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to take the chair. Thank you.
Okay, councils, we're now up to planning reports. Item agenda 8.1 for use and development of land for a dwelling and outbuilding of 81 Cross Forest Road, Camperdown. I'll hand over to Mr. Moyne. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I present Council with this report for planning permit application PP 2019-117. The application seeks planning approval for the use and development of land for a dwelling and outbuilding. The proposed dwelling is sited on the western side of Lake Notuck, approximately 16 metres from the Lake Crater rim. The proposed dwelling will incorporate a traditional design with pitched roofing at a total height of 6.95 metres above ground level and will be constructed with limestone brick veneer walls. The dwelling is in an area of the site located within the Rural Conservation Zone, a significant landscape overlay Schedule 1 and environmental significance overlay Schedule 1. In particular, the significant landscape overlay seeks to conserve and enhance the landscape character and significance of Lake Notuck and Lake Bullen-Merri surrounds. Applications must demonstrate that there is no alternative location suitable for development on the site. The applicant has been presented with options to consider alternate locations for the dwelling. Public notice of the application was given. A total of 5 objections have been received for the application. The applicant has also presented a document of 15 separate statements of support from surrounding landowners to accompany their application. Key issues raised by objections include siting and location of the dwelling in the overlays not being appropriate, landscape and visual impact, environmental impact, and citing previous investigations and work undertaken to protect the lake environment through Amendment C8. The proposal has been assessed against the Corangamite planning scheme and is not supported by relevant policy direction or planning controls, particularly relating to the siting and design of development on Lake Notuck Crater Rim. The landscape character objectives and planning requirements of the significant landscape overlay are clear in this case. New development around the Lake Crater Rim, which modifies the landscape and changes it from its natural condition, should not be supported. Issues raised within the late objections received for the application are noted and broadly supported in the planning assessment. Councillors, the recommendation is before you to issue a notice of refusal to grant a permit.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. Councillors, the recommendation is on page 20. Do I have someone move that recommendation, please? Councillor Kennedy, do I have a seconder? Oh, Councillor Macon? Councillor Kennedy, thanks.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and through you. The application is for 81 Cross Forest Road in Camperdown. In 2004, Planning Scheme Amendment C8 was introduced into the Corangamite Planning Scheme in response to local community and scientific community pressure to protect the volcanic Mar lakes containing Lake Bullen-Merri and Lake Notuck. This is possibly a unique environment and is well loved by Corangamite residents. The lakes area is recognised nationally and internationally for its environmental, scientific and landscape significance. A 109-page panel report investigated the basis and merits of the C8 amendment, considering scientific and aesthetic, environmental, social and cultural values, amongst other things. The significant landscape overlay and environmental significance overlay were subsequently created to preserve these recognised values with objectives to conserve and protect the lakes area from development that would cause adverse effect. The lake area is presently well conserved and retains open, visual and natural landscape setting. It allows a high level of community benefit and is valued by the community, providing spectacular views, recreational enjoyment, scientific and tourism opportunities. The proposed site for the dwelling application is within the overlays and the Rural Conservation Zone. The proposed development will be clearly visible atop the crater rim at almost 7 metres in height and constructed with limestone block. It is not compatible with the identified conservation values and environmental sensitivities aimed to protect the area, and neither with the municipal planning strategy and planning policies framework. The Rural Conservation Zone specifically refers to the option of an alternate site location for the dwelling. However, the applicants are averse to that option. The main focus of the planning assessment is the dwelling site, the design plans and the impact on the significant landscape. The applicants have options available to them to amend their plans and to bring them within the planning controls which would enable support of the application. There have been multiple meetings and communications on the relevant concerns. I am hopeful the applicants will become more amenable to reaching a suitable resolution. I note the applicants have some positive intentions, such as revegetation on the crater slope, weed control, on-site wastewater and stormwater management, and installation of a solar system. The applicants obtained 16 statements of support from surrounding landowners as a late addition to their application. One offered additional comment suggesting colour and elevation sympathetic to the surrounds. 4 late submissions opposed the development on the basis of the dwelling location, visual and environmental impact, and citing the C8 amendment. One highlighted the public outcry that led to the C8 amendment. The Rural Conservation Zone and Significant Landscape Overlay were imposed for many good reasons. New development is strongly discouraged on the crater rim and slopes. There has been no new dwelling construction in the overlay zones since the introduction of the C8 amendment in 2004, thus contributing to the preservation of the beautiful asset we have today. There must be compelling reasons to justify any divergence from the planning controls. In my opinion, there are no compelling reasons, and the decision is clear-cut. Therefore, I support the recommendation of the officers to refuse a permit.
Thank you, Councillor Canady. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The significant landscape overlay recognises the significance of Lake Notuck and Lake Boolamero and their surrounds, and acknowledges that the unique landscape is attractive to both residents and visitors. Since the induction of the significant landscape controls in 2004 via Amendment C8, no new dwellings have been approved within or around the lake crater rim. The proposed dwelling will alter the natural landscape and will be clearly visible atop of the crater rim due to it sitting only 16 metres from the rim, and will be visible from public land due to its setting and design. There are alternative locations to place the dwelling on the property in order to avoid the adverse impacts of the significant landscape, and I am happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. Councillors, do I have any further comments? No? I'll just make addition to that. We can't deny this is a unique landscape, and the history is also unique. It's got high international significance, we know that, and obviously the amount of work that went into the C8 was a testament to that. I always said that we're caretakers, we're here for a short time when you look at the whole scheme of council, and that the decisions we make can impact not only the past but also, more importantly, the future. So I have tossed and turned over this one, as I do with a lot of planning decisions. It's undeniable that the house that we got to see in the plans and what the Palmers are wanting to build that house out of, it's absolutely beautiful and stunning, and I can imagine how it would look. But I can't help but agree with the officer's recommendation that it all comes down to where the house is wanting to be built. Previous practices of development prior to the C8 obviously is not amendable, and I think it's really important that we continue on with the ongoing regulation for the land use and development of the lakes and its environment. Research into future years may refine the boundary line and, you know, in the big scale of the landscape, but it is what it is. As the rules sit today, the proposed development cannot be constructed within these limits of the SLO, or the significant landscape overlay, and the environmental significance overlay. Concerns were raised, as Councillor Canady alluded to, over many issues were raised because of the impact of new dwellings that were popping up around the crater's rim, and hence why the C8 was introduced and has been, we've stuck to that for so long now. And my concern has also been, I know the word precedent and not creating a precedent, but there's been applications that have been denied that will just come back to the council table if we open the floodgates. So I'm supportive of the officer's recommendation. So if there's no further comments, councillors, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That motion is carried. We'll now move on to item 8.3, as we've just shuffled the agenda items around. So 8.3 is the demolition of building of George Kane's cottage and construction of a single dwelling, 68 Manifold Street, Camperdown. Mr Moyne, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and through you, I present Council with this report for planning permit application PP 2020/103. The application seeks planning approval for demolition of George Kane's cottage in Camperdown and construction of a new single dwelling at the property. George Kane's cottage is identified within the Camperdown Heritage Study as a locally significant example of an early dwelling built without architectural design in the period 1861 to 1869. The property was included in the Heritage Overlay following Planning Scheme Amendment C7 in May 2007, which implemented the findings of the Camperdown Heritage Study. Planning assessment of the application principally focuses on the proposed demolition of the cottage. Public notice of the application has been given and Council has received 7 submissions, 1 objection and 6 submissions in support. Issues raised in the objection can be summarised as loss of heritage value and external building retention. Submissions in support of the application cover amenity impacts, site management and appearance, building deterioration, and loss of heritage value. There is no question that the cottage has deteriorated into poor condition. However, Council's Heritage Advisor notes that the condition of the building itself does not determine the significance of a place or site. In this case, the building still retains its main external features of its original construction. Works and treatment can be done to secure the building and then restore it into the future. A permit is required for demolition by the Heritage Overlay, and this must be the focus of assessment. The Heritage Advisor states that the building is still of heritage significance and should be protected and retained. Whilst grander buildings may exist within the Shire, the cottage tells the story of Camperdown and reflects an important demonstration of the town's early beginnings through its simplicity and size. It is rare to have a surviving cottage of this era within a township. The cottage is a timber-framed modest structure and there are simple measures which can be undertaken to secure and restore the building whilst also retaining site development potential. The proposal has been assessed against the relevant provisions of the Corangamite planning scheme and does not provide an acceptable outcome. Demolition of the dwelling is not supported by the relevant heritage policy directions and provisions of the municipal planning strategy, planning policy framework and heritage overlay. Councillors, the recommendation is before you to issue a notice of refusal to grant a permit.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. Council's recommendation is for you on page 36. Do I have someone move that recommendation? Oh, who was first? Sorry. Councillor Kennedy, and I'm assuming seconded by Councillor Macon. Councillor Councillor Hickey was seconder. Councillor Kennedy, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and through you. I have to admit that I did find this decision quite difficult, and I turned it around in my mind for some time, and there were just 1 or 2 matters that probably brought me to this decision. The applicants propose to demolish the building known as George Kane's Cottage at 68 Manifold Street and construct a single dwelling on the property, and are prepared to install a plaque in recognition of the cottage and the history of the site. The cottage is included on the Heritage Overlay. The Camperdown Heritage Study of 1995 and 1998 identified George Kane's Cottage as a locally significant example of early heritage. It and the whole site was included under the Heritage Overlay Scheduled 173 in 2007. The citation from the Heritage Study notes the cottage as a good specimen of a labourer's cottage built in the 1860s without architectural design in the very early days of Camperdown's settlement. The family story survives with the building. A heritage precinct exists in the area with the opposite side of Manifold Street also under the heritage control, and the Findlay Avenue of Elms included on the Victorian Heritage Register. It is true that limited work has occurred at the property for many years. 2 separate permits issued in 2015 and 2019, each approved for works to the cottage and construction of new build, have not been acted upon. The 2019 permit is still active. 7 submissions have been received following public notice of the proposal. 6 are in support and cite the dilapidated condition of the building, amenity, vermin and concern about vagrants. A rundown property is an annoyance to neighbours, and I can appreciate that frustration. No resident has, however, taken the opportunity to make any formal complaint to the council on the property condition. If any had, the council, through local laws, would be able to direct a notice to the property owner to address the issues. The matters raised in the submissions are not justifiable concerns to overturn the heritage overlay and the planning decision. Additionally, these concerns can be managed with a restoration. I think we can all appreciate the importance of heritage planning and the value of it to present and future generations. Heritage contributes substantially to overall community benefit. In this case, we have a fairly complete picture, a building and the story with it. This is part of and adds colour to the Camperdown story. Every building on the register that is demolished erodes the Camperdown heritage fabric. The municipal planning strategy and built environment and heritage cite encouragement for conservation and restoration of heritage buildings in Camperdown and conservation of historical attributes to the town. Comment from a specialist was sought, I'll say that a different way. Specialist comment was sought from a heritage advisor, which noted the building still retains much of its original features and therefore its local heritage significance. Repair back to a good condition is achievable. In response to my question at the site inspection, the applicants agreed they have no appetite to restore the building, although they had made some investigation into the option. I think this case allows both sides of the debate to be addressed. Complete demolition of the building will erase the site's heritage significance. There are many examples of clever, sympathetic restoration and design options incorporating heritage structures and modern additions. It is acceptable under the planning scheme for the facade only of the building to be retained. Demolition of the building would reduce the site to a standard residential situation. I would hope the applicants will engage in further discussion in the interests of reaching an acceptable solution. The officer's report describes clearly the principles applied to the assessment. There is no compelling reason to demolish the building. I believe the heritage overlay should be upheld, and I support the officer's recommendations to refuse a permit application.
Thank you, Councillor Canady. Councillor Hickey, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I also struggled with this decision to second the resolution or the motion, but I believe that heritage is a very, very important part of this fabric of this society. That building goes back to 1860. It's 1860. It's a fairly long time ago, and whilst it doesn't represent good condition, I think that it's incumbent upon us as a community, as a shire, to make sure that we look after our heritage significance. I do accept the fact that, and I commend the applicant on the proposal that's put forward to as far as recording and documenting the building in a structure and constructing the plaque at the front. But at the moment, it's still got a significant history overlay of it, and because of that, I can't support the demolition of it. However, I would just say, as a community, it's a shame that such a significant cottage has been left to fall into such disrepair.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillors, any further? Councillor Macon.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to say, by removing this cottage, Camperdown loses a building of heritage significance and a part of the history that can never be replaced. It is rare to have a surviving example of cottage of this era, and we should be doing everything to preserve it. Clause 11.03-6L state we shall protect the township's collection of heritage buildings and historic building stock, and this is a prime example of what we should be preserving. With the right ways and means, this cottage could be worked into something quite exceptional and still be able to tell the story of George Kane. The opposite side of Manifold Street is also under heritage control as part of the Manifold Street precedent, and 2 locally significant timber buildings, and these cottages have been renovated quite well to still preserve the heritage and the story behind them. Going forward, we will need to engage communication with the landowner to make sure the property is maintained to an acceptable standard. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Makin. I think councillors will agree, having received the submissions we have in favour of the demolition, it is certainly raised to us that we didn't know before was that the community do have a concern of the state of the building. So I think our planning department, as well as the local laws, are certainly aware of stuff going forward, or things going forward now around what more we can do to help facilitate improvements to heritage sites. But I certainly too believe there's, the heritage overlay was put there many, many years ago by many people's involvement and by specialist heritage advisors, of whom we've still consulted with over the significance of that building. And considering that there is currently a live building permit on that, or planning permit on that site too, it means it has got capabilities to still be co-located with some new infrastructure, whilst also appreciating what is currently there. So councillors, if there's no further comment, Councillor Cole, sorry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I tend to think that the house probably should be demolished. I think it's possibly past its use-by date. Everything has a finite time. I've got older buildings at home that are probably struggling, and I don't think whether the council wants to get into renovating old buildings. I could put a fair bucket load into it. I note that in Melbourne there are plenty of buildings that have been demolished, fine, beautiful buildings, and some very, very plain workman-type cottages, and they've put a plaque on them. What was there on the site, the historic implications of that site, and then they've built another building. Buildings do wear out and pass their use-by date. And there are other examples of this type of building in Camperdown. There's one down at Thornton Street, very, very similar design. And some others, as we've mentioned before, others over the other side of Manifold Street. So I just think time has come for that building, unfortunately. It's sort of beyond its use-by date. And I had a chat to the author of the historic overlay site, and his only comment was demolish it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Just a quick question, Mr. Moyne, and apologies. In terms of going forward, and is there an opportunity to review the heritage status of that, and have perhaps some more consultation with the community of that particular building? How could that process be facilitated if that was to occur?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. As it currently stands at the moment, through the Camperdown Heritage Study, the property is identified as being of significance, and that is the basis and the reason why the heritage overlay was applied in 2004. The heritage advisor reinforces that through specialist comments that the building, even in its poor condition, is still of significance as well. But moving forward, more broadly, there is an opportunity to individually review this site potentially in the future, but council needs to bear in mind that the advice at this point regarding the condition of the building is that it still meets the criteria as being a significant property, a significant building in itself, and isn't appropriate for demolition. So that would need to be a future decision that would need to be made around whether an investigation is undertaken, and then as a result of the finding of that investigation, whether the heritage overlay is suitable to continue to apply to that property and what the opportunities for that property are.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. And sorry, apologies for the question without notice. Okay, councillors, with nothing further, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That motion is carried. Thank you. I will now ask for Mayor Gastrain to return, please.
Thank you again, Madam Deputy Mayor, for standing in for me. Hopefully I'm here in the seat till the end of the meeting. We're now reverting back to item 8.2, the planning permit application P 2020-108, erection and display of floodlit double-sided major promotional sign at 1232 Camperdown, Cobden Road. Cobden. Mr Moyne.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, I present Council with this report for planning permit application PP 2020-108. The application seeks planning approval for the erection of a double-sided major promotional sign to be located on commercially zoned land in Cobden, with the advertising space made available for lease. The proposed sign will have a total height of 5.15 metres, consisting of a display face 8.3 metres long by 2.2 metres high, with a total display area of approximately 38 square metres. Billboard lights will be attached to the sign to allow for potential illumination of the display face. Public notice of the application was given and council has received one objection. Issues raised in the objection include impact on streetscape and local character of the area, impact on the operation of the adjoining truck stop and petrol station, and impact on road safety. The proposal has been assessed against the Corangamite planning scheme and is not considered to provide an acceptable response to the relevant provisions of the municipal planning strategy, planning policy framework and specific provisions which relate to signage. The major promotional sign at the entrance into Cobden is not in keeping with the rural character and will detract from the area rather than enhance the existing character. The sign will create an unacceptable level of visual clutter when entering Cobden and is not suitable in its proposed location. While signs of this nature can only be erected in commercial and industrial zones, in this case the sign will not improve or enhance the area in a way which warrants planning support. Issues raised within the objection have been addressed as part of the planning assessment. Councillors, the recommendation is before you to issue a notice of refusal to grant a permit.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. Councillors, recommendation, as Mr Moyne's just mentioned, to refuse the permit. Anyone want to move the recommendation?
Madam Mayor, if I may,
Councillor Kennedy.
I would like to move an alternate motion, please.
Yes, thank you. Do you want to read your alternate motion, please?
That Council issue a notice of decision to grant a permit under the provision of the Corangamite planning scheme with amended conditions as follows. Increased setback of 2.5 metres from the southeastern boundary of the site and deletion of the lighting.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please?
Second.
Councillor Vogels. Councillor Kennedy, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. The property is subject to the proposal is in the Commercial 1 zone. The sign is proposed to have a total height of 5.15 metres and a display face of 8.3 metres long by 2.2 metres high. There has been one objection to the proposal. The siting of the sign is in the midsection of a light industrial zone alongside the fuel station and inside the boundary of an existing commercial property. The promotional sign, whilst large, will not look out of place in the setting and is relatively proportionate with the fuel station facade and its freestanding signage. I don't think the rural character of Cobden will be especially impacted in this location, as the general appearance of the zone is light industrial. The commercial 1 zone is not located at the absolute entrance to the town, one having travelled perhaps 1.5 kilometres before reaching it. The applicants have provided a late submission addressing concerns raised in relation to the original proposal. They have modified the proposal to mitigate these concerns by removing the illumination to the display face, increasing the setback from the street boundary, offering to provide a sign with a skirting board dedicated to community signage, which provides some local community benefit. An example of a similar sign at Bridgewater has been provided. It is certain the market will determine who advertises on these signs, but the opportunity for local business to uptake this option is there. Suggesting an additional local content clause, oh sorry, I shouldn't say, I will take that out, I beg your pardon. In their letter dated December 14, the applicants acknowledge an understanding of the Planning Department decision, but their readiness to address concerns suggests the applicants have sensitivity to the location and a willingness to achieve a reasonable outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Vogels, would you like to add something further?
I'll just add that with the flood lighting removed and the extra 2.5 metre setback, I'm all fine with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, anyone like to make comment? Councillor Beard.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. I won't be supporting Councillor Kennedy's alternate motion for various reasons. Certainly supportive of the gap that has been identified in terms of regional advertising, that the regional billboard company, who are now known as Gork, have obviously invested a lot of money and time over and are certainly addressing, as I said, the gaps through a lot of our smaller rural and regional communities. But when it comes to Cobden, being a resident there myself, the local planning policy and the way that we seek to protect the rural aspect of that community, particularly around the town entry, is really pivotal to what I do and represent. I'm certainly aware that the business network, who meet regularly, have often said about advertising, but more on a community notice board, not to this degree. And from what I've seen examples that the regional billboard co have used, it's all quite large, high-end advertising for businesses that aren't as such relevant to the small rural community of Cobden. My fear is that they're becoming the Golden Arches, the McDonald's branding of Warrnambool 40Ks, 48Ks down the road. And at the end of the day, even though it would be situated within a commercial zone, it is actually exactly adjacent to a residential area, so that part concerns me. I also noted in the report, or in the submission by the applicants, that they say that the fact that it's on the cars coming through town, it's a way to help make them stop. Most of the traffic coming through Cobden in that direction, heading towards Camperdown, they're on their way out of Cobden, so they've actually already passed through the main centre. That's the cars that often come up from the Great Ocean Road. So they come down the Great Ocean Road and then they go back to the metropolitan areas via Cobden to Camperdown, Colac direction. So to me, it defeats the logic of community benefit by encouraging people to support local businesses. As I said, I don't have a problem with regional billboards, what their philosophy is around addressing the gaps within the advertising market regionally. I just have an issue with the location.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillors, is there anything further? I'll put Councillor Kennedy, would you like the right of reply? Do you have anything further you want to add?
No, I don't think I have anything further to add. Thank you, Mayor Constrain.
Thank you. We'll put Councillor Kennedy's motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is lost. Councillor Kennedy, Councillors, we're back to square one. We have a recommendation. Would anyone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Beard.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move that recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Macon. Councillor Beard.
I don't think I'll go over what I've already said. My reasons for supporting the refusal still stands, and as I said, nothing against the applicants themselves or what they do, but it's just the location for me, and I think there's possibly more suitable places on further out of the town that would be perhaps much better situated.
Thank you. Councillor Macon, do you have something to add?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The proposed sign will create an unacceptable level of visual clutter along the Cobden Gateway, with a number of existing business signs already located within close proximity on the two commercial sites. The proposed signage is not in keeping with the rural character for Cobden, and the size, scale and location of the major promotion sign is likely to be visual dominant and detrimental to the existing local character and will detract from the rural setting. The proposed sign offering commercial advertising space will be of little community benefit for the Cobden surrounds. Therefore, I'm happy to recommend the recommendation, support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. Councillors, is there any further comments? If not, I'll put the motion, Councillor Beard's motion, to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried 4-3. Next item is, we're on to officers' reports, councillors, and it's item 9.1, contract 2021-013, construction of 12 Apostles Trail Stage 1, Package B, along North-South Road and Timboon Peterborough Road from Curdyvale Port Campbell Road to Haywards Road, Timboon. Ms Love, do you address this item, please?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, councillors, this report is to award contract 2021-013, Package B, for part construction of the 12 Apostles Trail Stage 1, Timboon to Port Campbell. Council has undertaken a competitive tender process to recruit a contractor to construct a 2.5 metre wide unsealed path and associated works as a part of the trail. 6 submissions were received from 5 tenderers. A panel of suitably qualified and experienced council staff and independent consultant undertook an evaluation of the submissions in accordance with council's procurement policy, the 12 Apostles Trail Stage 1 Strategic Procurement Plan and the specified criteria. 5 submissions were considered eligible for evaluation, 3 of which were shortlisted. All shortlisted tenderers demonstrated capacity and capability to deliver on the project and an ability to meet the specified timelines. All contractors were experienced and familiar with the local area. All contractors specified use of material consistent with the specification and from quarries identified by council. There was some variation between the tenderers in the level of documentation and evidence to management systems and the lump sum tendered price, which was, however, competitive in the range of $668,000 to $761,000. Local content and internal quality assurance systems and processes were key points of difference. Civil Now Pty Ltd were considered to provide the best value to council, having regard to the capacity and capability to deliver on the project, previous experience with civil infrastructure projects, resourcing and experience of personnel responsible for delivering the tasks, an ability to meet the required timeframes, a comprehensive internal quality assurance system and processes, and a high local content with material to be purchased locally and the majority of labour and plant to be sourced from a local contractor. Councillors, the recommendation before you is to award contract 2021-013 to Civil Now Proprietary Limited for the amount of $668,676. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Love. Councillors, there's a recommendation to award this contract to Civil Now Proprietary Limited. Does someone like to move it? Councillor Macon. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Vogels. Councillor Macon.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. To construct the 2.5 metre wide unsealed path and associated works as a part of the 12 Apostles Trail Stage 1 Package B of the Timboon to Port Campbell Trail, Civil Now Proprietary Limited were considered to provide the best value to council as they have the capacity and capability to deliver the project, also having previous experience with civil infrastructure projects. Civil Now ability to meet the required timeframes on this project was of importance as we, the community, cannot wait to use this great piece of infrastructure. Also, their resourcing and experience of personnel responsible for delivering of key tasks of this nature was of high importance. The high local content with materials purchased locally and majority of labour and plant to be sourced from a local contractor of 70% will be a great importance of the community, as they can say they can have something to do with getting this project completed, and I'm sure they'll take great pride in getting this happening. I'm happy to support this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. Councillor Vogels.
I have nothing further to add. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, was there any further comment? Councillor Beard.
Councillors, this is a really exciting time. Stage 1, Package B. We're getting closer and closer to getting this trail constructed. So I'll admit I had reservations about it being Civil Now being a contractor from Warrnambool, but I was reassured knowing that that contractor would be getting all materials and utilising plant and labour from within the Corangamite Shire, and that's why the previous council put so much emphasis on that 20% weighting through the COVID economic stimulus and support package. So it's important to remember that. And Ms Love, I'm sorry, but I'm wondering if I could just ask of you too, well, considering there's a couple of local contractors that were unfortunately not successful in this tendering process, I'm assuming the Assets Department will continue to work with them for future projects or for future possibilities of work coming up. Is that usually something that happens to make sure all documents and everything are supplied?
Thank you, Councillor Beard, and through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Councillor Beard will work with those local contractors, and I'd also make a note too that there's still 2 sections of unsealed trail to be delivered as a part of the 12 Apostles Trail. That'd be sections C and D.
Thank you. Anything further, councillors? If not, I will put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Motion's carried. Item 9.2, the Terang Battery Energy Storage System, Corangamite Shire submission. Mr Moyne, could you introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, I present Council with this report and draft submission for the proposed Terang Battery Energy Storage System. AC Energy proposed to develop a battery energy storage system, or BESS, on land directly adjoining the Terang Terminal Station. The BESS would comprise installation of 78 purpose-built 40-foot shipping containers on land, approximately 1.5 hectares in area. The facility would include ancillary electrical infrastructure. Following a request received by AC Energy, the Minister for Planning is currently undertaking consultation on the BESS before determining whether to intervene and amend the Corangamite planning scheme to facilitate the development. This report and the draft submission have been prepared following a review of the application and planning scheme amendment documentation and considering the land use, location and physical context of the site. The draft submission has been prepared taking a neutral position on the BESS. Instead, it aims to convey key issues and matters requiring further consideration. The submission notes that Council is not responsible authority for a decision, which is now with the Minister for Planning. The draft submission covers the following key issues and themes: public consultation, planning approval process, BESS co-location and utility zone, Terang residential growth, noise impacts, landscape and visual impacts, bushfire risk assessment and management, traffic impacts and community benefit. Importantly, the draft submission highlights concern around the lack of public consultation for a project which is deemed to be of state and regional significance, along with issues around the need to more holistically consider the suitability of the site and area for utility-scale battery energy projects. This includes potential noise impacts, primarily from air conditioners, and the need for 6 and 7 metre high acoustic walls surrounding the facility. The draft submission is presented for Council to authorise the Chief Executive Officer to submit to the Minister for Planning on the BESS proposal. Councillors, the recommendation is provided before you.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. Councillors, there's a recommendation there. Does anyone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Kennedy, do I have a seconder? Councillor Hickey, thank you. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. I have no hesitation in supporting the recommendation as put. It is absolutely imperative that Council make a submission to the Minister for Planning in relation to the BEST project. I also believe it is our responsibility to assist the Terang community in this way. By any estimation, this project proposed by AC Energy will create an enormous change for the town of Terang and its immediate and wider community. Notification has also been received of a second proposed BEST project nearby. The Terang community deserves nothing less than to be afforded the opportunity and the courtesy of fair, adequate engagement and consultation on projects that, if approved, will change the amenity of the eastern entrance to the town. The draft submission prepared by Council officers highlights the lack of consultation, multiple large-scale projects, noise. The AC Energy project proposes 7 metre by 6 metre high acoustic walls for noise attenuation, which sounds very scary and makes one wonder just how much noise that project may emanate. Terang residential growth could be inhibited as that the siting of the BEST project is very close by an area that has been set aside for residential development. Impacts on landscape and visual, bushfire risk and other concerns. Following community feedback in June and at the June meeting, Council resolved to request AC Energy submit a planning permit application through Council. AC Energy has subsequently applied to the Minister for Planning to intervene. The ministerial planning approval process would enable a fast-track planning decision and outcome for the BEST. This approach by the proponent shows disrespect and disdain for our rural community. Considering the scale and significance of the project, it is not good enough to send notices only to directly adjoining landowners and to avoid proper engagement with the broader Terang community. So I absolutely support the recommendation as put.
Thank you, Councillor Canady. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's very important that we do maintain the integrity of our small towns within the Shire of Corangamite, and I don't think the visual amenity is going to be well received by the community. However, that's the decision for the community consultation, and I think the recommendation that the CEO make a submission with the understanding of the people of the people of Terang and surrounding districts would be well worth supporting.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillors? Councillor Beard?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. It's a great and thorough submission that will obviously be written on our behalf by the CEO, and with I'm sure there was major contribution from the planning and economic development team as well. So thank you to all of those involved. I think we definitely need to know more. We feel like we need to know more, so we can only imagine what the community thinks. The fact that the applicants have actually identified it as a regional significant project, I mean, there needs to be significant consultation, and up until now that hasn't occurred, so we obviously call upon the Minister to make sure that that happens. We're also under the understanding that there's a potential second BEST that will be located adjoining this particular one. So that in itself, if anyone can imagine then two side by side, that needs to be looked at as an entirety and the potential for that to occur as well. I think it's good that we're going in with a neutral position, but we're here to represent our communities, and that's what the previous council's role was when they wanted to be part of the decision-making process, which has now been taken away from council. But I think we still need to be there for our community. The adjoining landowners, this will affect far more reach than just the adjoining landowners, so I think they deserve, everyone in that community deserve the right to have input. So I hope that our submission is read for its entirety and the seriousness that goes with that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Is there anything further, councillors? No, before I put it to the vote, I'd just like to, I guess, enhance on what Councillor Canady has said. I think she covered it really, really well. I'm very, very disappointed about the lack of consultation that's gone on. There's only dealing with the budding landowners and putting a media release out there. So I think it's really important that Council's submission covers the concerns of the community aired last June when they were first broached on this, and I believe Mr Moyne has certainly done that. This is a major industrial activity being put on the edge of terrain, and I think we need to be mindful of the cumulative impact of a second BESS going nearby. And I too have concerns, Councillor Canady, about 78 domestic air conditioners running and the need to put a 7 metre high acoustic fence around it. It must be very noisy and is going to no doubt impact on the amenity of the adjoining landowners. So, councillors, we'll put that to a vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 9.3 is Narrogid Landfill Gas Management Agreement. Ms Linley, if you'd like to introduce this item, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report seeks council approval to enter into a contract with LMS Energy for the ownership and extraction of landfill gas from the Narrogid landfill for a period of 20 years, and to also commence the appropriate processes for this to occur. Council is required under EPA licence 12192 to take measures to prevent emissions of landfill gas from exceeding the action levels specified in the EPA Best Practice Environmental Management Guidelines. The Narrogid landfill has a history of minor landfill gas volumes venting to the environment as part of the ongoing operation of the site. These have been reported to the EPA and have been treated and mitigated with largely passive treatments such as biopiles and improved maintenance. The EPA has identified in more recent approvals for landfill cells that active rather than passive landfill gas management is required prior to any further cells being approved at Narrogid. Consequently, Council in 2017 began a process of identifying active landfill gas management options, including flaring and energy production using mechanical extraction systems. And in 2019, advertised an expression of interest for the management of landfill gas at the Narrogid Regional Landfill site. The appropriate evaluation and assessments have occurred. This report recommends that Council advertises its intention to enter into a 20-year contract with LMS Energy for the management of the landfill gas at the site, noting that the contract contains an option for a further 15 years and delegates to the CEO authority to finalise and sign the contract if no opposing submissions are received. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Linley. Councillors, recommendation on page 55. Anyone want to move that recommendation? Councillor Beard. Is there a seconder? Councillor Canady, thank you. Councillor Beard.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm more than happy for someone else to talk more than me tonight, but I did some Googling on LMS Energy, and looks like they've got the runs on the board when it comes to taking care of landfill gases across local government areas. So I have the utmost faith that they're going to be able to do something really well that we don't have the ability, or more than likely the finances, to do going forward. Over recent years, the EPA guidelines and the way in which they umpire our landfill is only getting more and more stringent. So it makes sense to look at a contract such as this. The contract itself is tight, it's in depth and it's lengthy. I have high regard that no stone has been left unturned when we're entering into this agreement with them. But it's exciting. There's going to be dollars spent at that landfill that's not Corangamite Shires or our ratepayers. So I think we all should be excited to sit back and watch how this plays out, but I think it's a great way to manage something that we have always often felt we need to, what was the unknown into the future. So I'm happy to support this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillor Canady, do you have anything extra to add?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, Councillor Beard spoke very well to that. It makes complete sense to enter into this contract. It's a really sensible way for Council to manage its obligations to the EPA to manage the gas it's a very satisfactory arrangement, and I think we can look forward to those obligations being managed very well for a long period of time. So I support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Canady. Is there any further comments, councillors?
Sorry,
Councillor Beard.
through you, Madam Mayor. I just had a question without notice again, sorry, to Ms Lindley. Is there a preferred site location of the actual gas utilisation facility? I noted on the plan that there was 3 identified areas that it could be. At what point will we know where that facility will actually be built?
Thank you for the question, councillor. At this stage, the 3 options remain. It will be whichever component site is the best location for the emissions that will occur from the gas. So whatever site actually produces the most amount of gas.
I just think it's another good thing for the public to see that's happening out there at the landfill. If it is able to be visual, I think that's not a bad thing.
Thank you, councillor. Will do.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. If there's nothing further, councillors, I'll put to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 9.4 is the quick response grants allocation for December 2020. Ms Lindley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report is to approve the December 2020 allocation of funds as part of the Quick Response Grants program. The program supports instances of community need that are not readily able to be considered under other grant programs offered by Council. Applications for quick response grants are considered by Council as they are received and are assessed against criteria including eligibility, alignment with the Council plan, benefit to the community and eligible expenditure. The annual budget allocation for the program is $17,500, with $13,727 remaining should Council approve the December allocation. Madam Mayor and Councillors, officers have received an application from the Bukar Recreation Reserve Committee and recommend that Council approve an allocation of $500 towards the restoration of the mural at the Bukar School.
Thank you, Ms Lindley. I think this is an excellent project at Bukar School. Someone like to move? Councillor Hickey, and seconded by Councillor Cole. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I don't think it needs much explanation here. $500 will go a long way to this community facility that's been lucky enough to be able to be restored and maintained. And so I think it'll, the renewal of the enhancement of the mural will do a great deal of for this project.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Cole, did you have anything further to add?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not a lot, just noting that this mural sort of details a bit of the history of Bukar and things, and as we know, Bukar being the centre of the known universe, it's worth updating, refreshing and keeping going forwards. Thank you.
Terrific. Restoration might feature a couple of councillors from Bukar. Who would know? If there's nothing further, councillors, I'll put it to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 9.5 is the Borrowing Policy Review 2020. Mr Ray.
Mayor, thank you. And through you, the report recommends Council adopt a revised borrowing policy. The borrowing policy sets out the conditions under which Council may wish to borrow funds for the purposes of sound financial management. The policy has been reviewed by officers, and the amendments proposed are largely as a consequence of the new Local Government Act, which was given royal assent in this calendar year. So the policy aligns it to the provisions of the new Act. No other amendments are proposed. The policy has also been considered by Council's Audit Committee. That was in September of this year, and the committee have recommended that Council adopt the revised policy without amendment. Mayor, the recommendations before you. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr Ray. Councillors, recommendation there to revoke the previous borrowing policy and adopt the current one. Someone like to move it? Councillor Canady, do I have a seconder? Councillor Macon. Councillor Canady.
Thank you, Mayor Strain. Whilst we do not currently have borrowings, it is essential to have clear policy and guidance should that ever be necessary. The policy has been updated to comply with the Local Government Act 2020 and has been oversighted by the Audit and Risk Committee. So I'm very pleased that we have that policy in place, and it'll be interesting to see if we ever need to use it. So I support the recommendation as put. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Macon, do you have anything further to add?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, if there's nothing further, all those in favour? It's carried. The item 9.6 is the review of mayoral and councillor allowances. Mr Mason.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, council allowances are paid to councillors and the mayor in recognition of the hours and potential loss of income that can occur. The setting of councillor allowances at this point in time has been done under the 1989 Local Government Act, noting that in the future allowances will be set by an independent body. Councillors can choose to set allowances within a range depending on what category the council is in. In the case of Corangamite, the maximum allowance for a councillor is $23,048, and for the mayor, the maximum is $68,857. These allowances were paid to the previous council, and it is noted that the Minister for Local Government has already indicated that there will be no increase in council allowances next year. It's recommended that council undertake public notice of its intention to set allowances, with this matter coming back to council for a final decision in the new year. So the recommendation is before you. In setting a motion, you councillors will need to just insert the dollar figures that they want.
Okay. Councillors, is a recommendation there? Someone like to move it? Councillor Beard. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Macon. Councillor Beard, would you like to speak to the motion and perhaps fill in
Yeah, I suppose I better fill the gaps in before everybody agrees to it or not. And I do love how it's always noted every time we get to this point that it's recognition of hours and potential loss of income, because it's very much tokenistic in some cases, I'm sure, as you would know, Councillor Gastrain. But we're very grateful for the opportunity, but I'm suggesting that for the council allowance, it be set at the $21,049 per annum, plus the superannuation equivalent, which is written there. And then for the mayoral allowance, that will be the $62,884 plus the superannuation equivalent, which should technically bring it up to what is tabled in the report. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillor Macon, did you want to add anything?
No further comment, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillors, is there any further comment? This is we're going to be advertising this for submissions. There's nothing further. I'll put it to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Councillors, we're now up to other business. Does anyone have any items of other business? No. Open forum. Mr Mulholland is with us this evening. Would you like to address council, Mr Mulholland?
First of all, I'd like to congratulate all the new councillors, and I hope that the portfolios, for want of a better word, that you've all chosen, you do enjoy them. What I'd like to do is invite all councillors to walk around the landfill with me, and the reason for that is there's three sides to every story, and I think you're very smart enough to form your own opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Mulholland. Thank you for your invitation. Councillors, if there's nothing further, we do have some confidential items to deal with. I'd ask someone, perhaps if we can adjourn standing orders temporarily, we'll have a 5-minute break, and then we'll resume with confidential items. So can I have someone to move? Thanks. Councillor Macon, do I have a seconder? Councillor Cole. All those in favour? That's carried, so we'll have a 5-minute break. In the meantime, I'd like to thank Mr Mulholland for coming along this evening. He's still here with us. And thank those who have listened in to this evening's meeting. Thanks very much. Oh, and yes, I'd like to wish you all a very happy Christmas. It's coming up very, very quickly. Have a peaceful Christmas and a safe one, and hopefully we'll see you next year, and we'll still be live streaming. Thank you.